The dim hum of the engines vibrated through the hull of the Epsilon Drift, a relic of the old expansion era, its corridors lit by flickering biolum strips that had long lost their steady glow. Captain Lyra Voss gripped the console on the bridge, her scaled fingers tapping a rhythm of frustration against the worn plasteel. She was Krellian, broad-shouldered and pragmatic, the kind who fixed problems with tools before words. Beside her, Engineer Tarak hunched over a diagnostic panel, his furred muzzle twitching as he muttered at the readouts. He was Varani, quick-witted and inventive, but even his optimism strained under the weight of their latest malfunction. Another cascade failure in the core regulator, Tarak said, his voice a low growl edged with exasperation. He wiped grease from his paws onto his jumpsuit, leaving dark smears. We've patched it 3 times this cycle. If we don't stabilize it soon, we'll be drifting dead in the void. Lyra nodded, her golden eyes narrowing at the starfield beyond the viewport. The galaxy stretched out in indifferent silence, a tapestry of nebulae and distant clusters that once teemed with the bold ventures of 100 species. But without the humans, gone for over a century now, vanished in some unspoken cataclysm. The trade lanes had frayed, colonies isolated, and ships like theirs became ghosts chasing salvage. Their mission was simple: haul a load of rare isotopes from the outer rim to the core worlds. Payday enough to refit the drift and maybe hire a real mechanic. But simplicity had a way of unraveling. A sharp alert pierced the air, red lights pulsing across the bridge. Lyra's tail flicked in irritation. What now? Tarak's ears flattened. Power surge. It's pulling from the auxiliary banks. If it hits the drive coils. He trailed off, already moving toward the access hatch. From the comm station, Navigator Ilara chimed in, her voice calm but threaded with caution. She was a slender Ilari, all precise movements and quiet insight, her feathered crest ruffling slightly as she scanned the holographic map. Incoming anomaly, Captain. Magnetic storm brewing off the port bow. It's distorting our NAV data, could shear us off course into the debris field. Lyra swore in Krellian, a guttural hiss that echoed off the bulkheads. The rim was littered with the husks of forgotten vessels, remnants of the human-led federations that had mapped these stars with reckless efficiency. Back then, such storms were routine hazards, navigated with protocols etched into every database. Now, with human tech scarce and their ingenuity a legend, crews like theirs improvised with scraps. She straightened, decision settling over her like armor. Tarak, get to engineering. Reroute what you can to shields. Ilara, plot us a vector around it, best guess if the data's glitchy. Aye, Ilara replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. The ship groaned as it banked, thrusters firing in uneven bursts. Lyra stayed rooted, watching the anomaly swell on the main display, a swirling vortex of ionized plasma, beautiful in its menace, like a predator uncoiling in the black. She remembered the old holovids, grainy tales of human captains who laughed at such threats, jury-rigging solutions from nothing. Grit and camaraderie, they called it. Her crew had plenty of the first, but the second? They were survivors, not saviors. As the storm's edge brushed their shields, a metallic screech reverberated through the deck, and Lyra braced for the hit that would test them all. Kaler gripped the console edge as the ship's hull groaned under another micrometeorite barrage. The viewport showed nothing but the endless black, speckled with a faint glow of distant stars, but he knew the debris field was closing in. His mandibles clicked in frustration. 3 cycles they'd been drifting since the core malfunction, and now this. The Vexery vessel, once a proud hauler of trade routes, was reduced to a battered relic, its automated systems failing one by one without the human oversight that had kept such ships humming for centuries. Beside him, Lyra adjusted her sensor array, her compound eyes flickering with data streams. She was the cautious one, always double-checking protocols before a jump, but caution hadn't saved them from the engine purge. The auxiliary thrusters are at 23%, she said, her voice a steady hum through the comms. If we reroute power from life support, we might punch through to the clear lane. But it'll drop oxygen recyclers to minimal. Zeth, lounging against the bulkhead with his usual wry tilt to his carapace, snorted. The witty engineer among them, he'd jury-rigged half the ship's redundancies back when humans still crewed these lines. Minimal? That's optimistic. Last time we skimped on air, I woke up tasting my own exhaust. But hey, better than becoming space dust. He tapped a claw on his datapad, pulling up schematics that glowed holographic blue. No humans meant no intuitive fixes, just cold code and alien logic that never quite meshed with the designs left behind. Kaler nodded, his brave streak pushing him forward despite the knot in his gut. The captain's role weighed heavy, 3 crew, 1 ship, and a cargo hold full of irreplaceable alloys meant for the core worlds. Losing it would cripple the Alliance's rebuild efforts, a reminder of how the galaxy staggered without humanity's grit. Do it, he decided. Reroute and fire the thrusters. Zeth, monitor for feedback loops. Lyra, plot the escape vector. The ship shuddered as power shifted, lights dimming to a sullen red. Zeth's claws danced over controls, initiating the surge. For a heartbeat, hope flickered, the engines whined to life, propelling them forward through the swirling debris. Then the alarms blared. A feedback loop, vicious and unchecked, ripped through the auxiliary banks. Sparks erupted from the console, singeing Kaler's arm chitin. Shut it down, he roared, slamming the emergency cutoff. The thrusters died with a final, mocking sputter, leaving them dead in the water once more. Debris closed in, thicker now, battering the hull with relentless force. Lyra's eyes widened, her calm fracturing. Shields at 40%. We can't take another hit like that. Zeth cursed under his breath, already prying open a panel to assess the damage. Black smoke curled from fried circuits, the acrid scent filling the bridge. Kaler's mind raced. Human manuals spoke of adaptive overrides, clever bypasses born from their endless ingenuity, but those were myths now, echoes and dusty archives. Without them, this failure wasn't just mechanical. It was a chasm, widening with every passing second. As the ship listed, Kaler caught a glimpse through the cracking viewport. A massive fragment tumbling end over end, hurtling straight for them. No time for plans. Brace, he shouted, pulling Lyra down as Zeth dove for cover. The impact rocked them like a thunderclap, metal screeching in protest. When the shaking stopped, silence reigned, broken only by the hiss of escaping atmosphere. They were alive, but the cost hung heavy. The cargo manifest blinked red on the console, half the hold compromised, alloys scattering into the void. And the core worlds would wait longer still, punished by the absence that had left them all grasping in the dark. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the console, her knuckles whitening against the worn plasteel. The bridge of the stellar drift hummed with the low thrum of failing engines, red emergency lights casting jagged shadows across the faces of her crew. Crix, the avian navigator, fluttered his feathers in agitation, his beak clicking as he scanned the holodisplay. The rift's expanding, Captain. If we don't reroute power now, it'll swallow us whole. She nodded, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Divert auxiliary from life support. We need thrust. Ilara's caution had kept them alive through a dozen skirmishes with the Vorith raiders, but this anomaly was no enemy fleet, it was the void itself rebelling. The galaxy had grown wild since humanity vanished, rifts like this tearing open without warning, as if the stars mourned their absence. Mira, the engineer, slammed a panel shut, grease streaking her face. Her wit cut through the tension like a laser. Life support? Bold move. Next you'll be asking us to breathe vacuum. But she complied, fingers flying over the controls. The ship shuddered, a groan echoing through the hull as power surged to the engines. Alarms blared, oxygen levels dipping, but the drift lurched forward, inching away from the swirling maw of the rift. Crix's eyes widened, his talons scraping the deck. It's not enough. The pull's too strong. He wasn't wrong. The holodisplay showed gravitational tendrils snaking toward them, remnants of some ancient human tech buried in the cosmos, now unchecked and furious. Ilara straightened, mind racing. Humans had built stabilizers for these rifts, but blueprints were myths now, scattered in forbidden archives. Mira, can we improvise a counterfield? Use the cargo bay emitters. Mira paused, wiping sweat from her brow. Risky. Might fry the whole ship. But if we time it right. She trailed off, already moving toward the access ladder. Ilara watched her go, the weight of command pressing down. One wrong choice and they'd join the ghosts of humanity, absent, but their echoes punishing the stars. The rift pulsed, a silent scream of warped space. Crix banked his wings nervously. Captain, the Vorith signatures are closing. They must sense the instability. Alara's jaw tightened. Of course they would. The raiders thrived on chaos, picking at the galaxy's wounds. Hold course. We'll outmaneuver them once Myra's done. She didn't mention the dropping oxygen, or the way her vision blurred at the edges. Grit defined her crew, but survival demanded more than that now. Below decks, Mira wrestled with conduits, sparks flying like angry fireflies. The emitters hummed to life, makeshift and volatile. "Come on, you human relic," she muttered, invoking the lost race as if their ingenuity lingered in the wires. A surge built, the ship vibrating violently. On the bridge, the holo display flickered. The rift's edge brushed their shields, reality fraying like old cloth. Alara gripped her seat. "Now Mira." The counterfield erupted, a blue wave clashing against the rift's darkness. The drift bucked, throwing cricks against his console. For a heartbeat, the void held its breath. Then, with a crack like thunder, the rift recoiled, shrinking back into the ether. Alarms quieted, but the cost lingered, shields at 20%, engines smoking. Myra's voice crackled over comms, laced with exhaustion. "We bought time, but the emitters are toast. And oxygen's critically low." Alara exhaled, scanning the scopes. The Vorith ships loomed closer, their jagged hulls glinting. The galaxy's punishment wasn't just the rifts, it was everything unraveling in their wake. "Patch what you can. We're not done yet." Crix adjusted his perch, feathers settling. "Humans would have fixed this in minutes. What did they have that we don't?" Alara met his gaze, the question hanging heavy. "And whatever's left of their fire." The ship accelerated into the stars, pursuit hot on their trail, the absence of humanity a shadow that stretched longer with every jump. Kale gripped the control yoke tighter, his claws scraping against the worn alloy as the shuttle shuddered through the nebulous fringes. The violet haze outside the viewport twisted like living smoke, playing havoc with the sensors. Beside him, Lyra hunched over the diagnostic panel, her fur bristling in frustration. "The interference is worsening," she muttered, her voice a low growl. "We can't get a clean lock on the signal. If we push deeper without recalibrating, we'll fry the emitters." Torin, lounging in the jump seat with deceptive casualness, flashed his needle-sharp teeth in a grin. "Then let's not recalibrate. Dive in blind, human style. They always charged ahead, right? Legends say they turn disasters into triumphs that way." His tail flicked lazily, but his eyes were sharp, watching Kale for the reaction. Kale shot him a glare, his own caution warring with the urgency gnawing at him. The signal they'd intercepted from the derelict station was faint, a ghost of human code buried in the static, promising coordinates to something called ARC Protocol. It was their first real lead in months of chasing shadows since the Veil storms had torn open the old human sectors. The galaxy was unraveling, colonies collapsing under unexplained energy surges, ships vanishing into rifts, and every species whispered that humanity's long absence had invited this chaos, like a parent leaving unruly children to fend for themselves. But finding proof, finding a way to summon them back, that was worth the risk. "Fine," Kale said finally, his voice steady despite the knot in his gut. Torin, suit up for manual scan. Lyra, route auxiliary power to the forward arrays. We go in hot, but if it spikes, we pull out. The shuttle lurched forward, engines humming a defiant song against the nebulous pull. The first jolt hit like a hammer, a surge that lit the cabin in erratic blue flashes. Alarms wailed and Lyra's paws flew across the controls. "Shields holding, barely. I'm reading anomalous particles like nothing in the databases. It's rewriting the hull integrity readings in real time." Torin was already at the airlock, sealing his helmet with a click. "Sounds fun. I'll tether out and eyeball it. Keep the coffee hot." He launched into the void with a burst from his pack, the line snaking behind him like a lifeline to sanity. Kale watched the feed from Torin's visor, the nebula closing in like a predator's maw. Swirls of gas parted to reveal jagged remnants, twisted metal husks that might have been human outposts, now adrift and scarred. The signal strengthened, pulsing with an almost rhythmic insistence, drawing them deeper. For a moment, hope flickered. This could be it, the key to ending the galaxy's punishment. Then the plan backfired spectacularly. Torin's line went taut, yanking him sideways as a rift tore open mere meters from the shuttle. A shimmering tear in space, spitting arcs of plasma that clawed at the hull. "Pull me back." Torin's voice crackled over comms, laced with uncharacteristic strain. "It's a gravity well, human trap? No worse, it's feeding on the engines." Lyra slammed the reverse thrusters, but the shuttle bucked, caught in the rift's embrace. Kale's world narrowed to the red warnings flooding the console. Power failing, hull breaches imminent. The cost hit him then, not just the mission but the lives. Torin thrashed against the pole, his form blurring in the feed, while Lyra's claws gouged the armrests. They were brave fools, all of them, chasing ghosts in a storm that humanity itself had perhaps unleashed. With a desperate twist, Kale overrode the safeties, shunting everything to the maneuvering jets. The shuttle spun wildly, breaking free just as the rift widened, swallowing a chunk of debris, and nearly Torin. He reeled him in, the line fraying but intact as they limped clear of the nebula's edge. Panting, Kale slumped back, the signal now a mocking echo in their wake. "We lost the lock," Lyra said quietly, her eyes on the fading glow outside. "And the forward array slagged. That was too close." Torin peeled off his helmet, fur matted with sweat, but his grin was back, thinner now. "Close? That was a dance with death. But hey, we got a glimpse. Those ruins weren't natural. Human design, etched in the metal. Whatever they're hiding, it's big. And it's angry." Kale nodded, the weight settling heavier. The galaxy's wounds ran deep, and their brush with the abyss was just a taste. They had to adapt, find another way in, or the punishment would claim them all. The dim glow of the auxiliary console flickered like a dying star, casting erratic shadows across the cramped bridge of the Vanguard's echo. Lyra's claws tapped rhythmically against the armrest, her avian feathers ruffled in frustration as she scanned the readouts. The warp conduit ahead shimmered unstably, a tear in the fabric of space that had widened since their last probe. "This isn't holding," she muttered, her voice a sharp trill. "The stabilizers are at 20%. If we push through now, we'll shred the hull." Captain Thorne gripped the command rail, his scaled hide rippling with tension. The big reptilian had led salvage runs for cycles, but nothing like this. A derelict human station orbiting a forgotten gas giant, its automated defenses now turned feral by entropy. Without humans to maintain the old networks, these relics spat anomalies like venom. "We need that data core," he growled, eyes fixed on the viewport where the station loomed, a skeletal behemoth against the swirling clouds. "The galaxy's falling apart because of their absence. If this core has the codes to reboot the outer rim relays, we save a dozen systems from blackout." Beside him, Engineer Crix hunched over his toolkit, the small furred mechanic's ears twitching as he jury-rigged a bypass. Cautious to a fault, Crix had argued against docking at all, citing the radiation spikes. But Thorne's resolve, and Lyra's optimism had won out. Now, with the ship's engines whining in protest, Crix wiped grease from his muzzle. "The plan was solid on paper," he said, voice steady but edged with doubt. "Dock at Bay 3, extract the core, evade the drones. But that conduit's human tech, sir. It's like trying to tame a storm with strings." Lyra shot him a wry glance, her beak curving in a half-smile. "Strings? That's your metaphor for warp fields? Stick to bolts, fuzzy." She leaned forward, plotting an alternate vector. The initial approach had backfired spectacularly. An automated turret had grazed their shields, forcing a hard burn that drained the reserves. Now the station's defenses hummed to life again, sensor pings echoing through the void like distant thunder. Thorne straightened, his tail lashing once. "Adapt. Lyra, thread us through the debris field on the port side. It'll mask our signature. Crix, prep the breaching charges, make him whisper quiet. We go in silent, grab the core, and ghost out before the big guns wake up." The ship shuddered as Lyra executed the maneuver, weaving through jagged chunks of ancient hull plating that tumbled lazily in the giant's gravity well. One fragment, etched with faded human script, brushed past the viewport, a silent testament to ingenuity long vanished. Inside, the air grew thick with the scent of ozone and sweat. Crix sealed the last connection on his device, a makeshift EMP pulsar cobbled from scavenged parts. "Charges ready. But if the drones adapt like last time..." "They won't," Thorne cut in, though his claws dug into the rail. He knew the risk. One wrong pulse and the station's core could cascade into a chain reaction, dooming not just them but the nearby colony ships relying on this relay. The galaxy punished their absence with blackouts and famines, worlds isolated in the dark. This run wasn't just salvage, it was defiance. As the Echo slipped into the debris shadow, a new alert blared, proximity warning. From the station's underbelly, a swarm of repair drones detached, their lights cutting through the gloom like predatory eyes. Lyra's wings flared involuntarily. "They're onto us." Vector holding but barely. Thorn nodded, voice calm steel. "Full quiet mode. Let's show these ghosts what grit looks like without their makers." The bridge fell silent save for the hum of straining systems, the crew locked in a dance with oblivion. Crix murmured a quiet calculation under his breath, fingers flying to reinforce the shields. Outside, the drones closed in, the gas giant storms raging as if the universe itself conspired against them. One slip, and the punishment would claim another crew in humanity's wake. The dim glow of the emergency lights flickered across the control deck of the Vanguard, casting long shadows that danced like specters over the consoles. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The ship groaned under the strain of the ion storm's fury, hull plates vibrating as if the vessel itself were alive and protesting. Beside her, Engineer Kai Ren hunched over a makeshift diagnostic panel, his fingers flying across the holographic display, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. "Structural integrity at 62%, Kai muttered, his voice steady but edged with the caution that had kept him alive through a dozen hull breaches. "If we don't reroute power from the auxiliary thrusters, the next surge will shear off the aft section. And us with it." Ilara nodded, her brave resolve a quiet fire that never wavered, even as doubt gnawed at her gut. She glanced at the viewport, where the storm's plasma arcs painted the void in jagged blues and violets, a beautiful trap that had claimed countless vessels before theirs. The Vanguard was no warship, just a survey frigate pushing the fringes of uncharted space, but the stakes felt personal now. Losing the ship meant losing their lead on the signal, that faint, anomalous pulse from the dead human outpost they detected weeks ago. And in this galaxy stripped of humanity's guiding hand, that signal might be the key to why everything had unraveled. "Divert it," she said, her tone clipped, decisive. "And patch me through to the away team on the surface." Kai's hands paused for a fraction of a second, his witty retort dying on his lips as another shudder rocked the deck. He knew better than to argue when her eyes burned like that, part grit, part desperation. "On it, Cap." But comms are glitchy, storms frying the relays. Below, on the fractured moon's surface, Lieutenant Mira Thorne crouched behind a jagged outcrop of obsidian rock, her envirosuit's visor fogging slightly from her ragged breaths. The away team's scanner hummed faintly in her gloved hand, its readings spiking erratically as dust devils whipped silicate particles across the barren landscape. The moon, a forgotten relic in the shadow of its gas giant parent, bore the scars of ancient bombardment, craters like open wounds, etched by weapons no one remembered. "Thorne to Vanguard," she whispered into her comm, her cautious nature making her scan the horizon twice before speaking. The rival scavengers they'd spotted earlier, those opportunistic Krell raiders, had gone quiet, but Mira trusted silence less than gunfire. Her team, just her and the rookie tech specialist, Jax, huddled nearby, his youthful enthusiasm tempered by the plasma rifle clutched in his lap. Static crackled in her earpiece, then Ilara's voice broke through, fragmented but urgent. "Mira, storm's worsening. We can't hold orbit much longer. Status on the artifact." Myra's gaze flicked to the half-buried structure ahead. A Humanera vault, its alloy door warped but intact, humming with residual energy that defied the millennia since humanity's exodus. The galaxy had thrived in their absence at first. Trade boomed, alliances formed without the meddlesome humans stirring pots. But now, with systems failing and stars flickering out in unnatural patterns, whispers spread. Humanity's departure wasn't a gift. It was a curse, their ingenuity the glue holding chaos at bay. "Artifacts powering up," Mira replied, keeping her voice low. "But the Krell are circling. Saw their skiff drop 3 heat signatures half a click out. If we crack it open they'll swarm." Jax shifted beside her, his fingers twitching on the rifle. "We could booby-trap the approach." Rig the seismic charges from the lander, channel the storm's static discharge through them. Fry their suits without alerting the ship. Mira shot him a look, half admiration, half wariness. The kid's cleverness was a wild card, but in a pinch it might save them. She relayed the idea to Elara, the comms line hissing with interference. Up on the Vanguard, Elara waited, the ship's alarms blaring a staccato warning. Kai sealed the power reroute with a final tap, the hum of engines deepening as they fought the storm's pull. "It's risky," he said, glancing at her. "But if the Krell get that tech first, we're all dead in the water." "Literally." Elara's jaw set. "Do it. And prep the extraction beam. We're getting them out, storm or no." On the surface, Mira and Jax moved like shadows, planting the charges along the vault's perimeter. The wind howled, carrying the faint whine of Krell engines closing in. As the first raider crested the ridge, Mira triggered the trap. A brilliant arc of ionized fury leaped from the ground, turning the lead scout into a silhouette of crackling light. The others scattered, but the distraction bought them seconds. They reached the vault, Jax overriding the ancient lock with a jury-rigged interface that sparked and whined. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber lit by bioluminescent panels, walls lined with data cores pulsing like forgotten hearts. Mira stepped inside, scanner in hand, as the Vanguard's beam pierced the storm above, a lifeline amid the chaos. But as the cores interfaced with her suit, a holographic map flickered to life, not just coordinates but a warning etched in human script. "The absence begins the reckoning." The galaxy's punishment, it seemed, was only starting, and their discovery had just painted a target on their backs. The ship lurched in orbit. The storm's next wave. Crix's claws trembled as he adjusted the final coupling on the human relic, the air in the engineering bay thick with the acrid tang of overheating circuits. The device hummed to life, a low vibration that resonated through the deck plates like a distant heartbeat. Vara stood at his side, her armored frame rigid, eyes fixed on the viewport where the void loomed, a swirling maw of darkness that had already claimed 3 outposts on the fringe worlds. "It's holding," Crix muttered, his voice a rasp over the growing whine. "But the power draw, it's pulling everything we've got." She nodded, not trusting words with the stakes this high. Their scout ship, the Enduring Flame, was the last bastion between the encroaching shadow and the core systems. The humans' absence had left the galaxy brittle, their ingenious networks of relays long decayed without maintenance. What remained were these scattered artifacts, puzzles of grit and foresight that no alien mind had fully unraveled. Vara's people, the Zorith, had pieced together fragments of human history, tales of worlds terraformed from ash, fleets forged from scrap, triumphs born of sheer, unyielding camaraderie. Now they needed that same fire to survive. The relic, a compact fusion core, etched with faded schematics, flared brighter. Energy surged into the ship's deflectors, pushing back the void's tendrils for the first time in cycles. Crix allowed himself a flicker of hope, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the glow. "See? The human design compensates. It adapts to the load, redistributes like living tissue." But as the words left him, a sharp crack echoed from the core's housing. Sparks erupted, and the hum twisted into a screech. Vara lunged forward, slamming a panel shut with her gauntlet fist. "Stabilize it. We can't lose this now." Alarms blared, red lights pulsing across the consoles. The void responded instantly, its edges curling inward like smoke-seeking flame. Crix's tendrils flew over the controls, rerouting auxiliary power from life support, from the engines, anything to buy time. Sweat beaded on his exoskeletal plates, rare for his kind. "It's failing. The core's matrix is fracturing. Humans built for endurance, but this one's been dormant too long. We pushed it too hard." She gripped his shoulder, her touch firm but not unkind. "Then we adapt like they did. Remember the logs we decoded? They didn't quit when their stars died. They jury-rigged, they fought with what they had." The ship shuddered as a probe from the void latched onto the hull, corrosive tendrils eating through the outer plating. Crix isolated the breach, but the cost was clear. Oxygen levels dropping, the bay's atmosphere thinning. Vara activated her suit seals, pulling Crix into a shared emergency field. Together they dragged auxiliary conduits toward the core, hands, claw and palm, working in frantic unison. A secondary explosion rocked the chamber, hurling tools across the floor in a clatter of metal. The relic dimmed, its light flickering like a candle in wind. Crix slumped against the bulkhead, breath ragged. We were so close. Without this, the flame won't make it to the next relay. The void wins. Vara scanned the damage, her mind racing through the human principles they'd studied. Ingenuity over might, teamwork over isolation. She spotted a overlooked junction, a human-style bypass etched into the relic's base. Simple, elegant, meant for exactly this kind of desperation. Here, she said, pointing. We splice the emergency reserves directly. It'll burn hot, but it'll hold. Crix hesitated, calculations whirring in his head. The risk was immense. Overload could vent the entire bay into space. But the alternative was surrender. He nodded, and they set to work, the void's growl vibrating through the walls as their makeshift solution took shape. For a moment, amid the chaos, Vara felt it, the echo of human grit, a punishment lifted not by force but by the will to endure. Kale gripped the console edge as the shuttle shuddered through the nebula's fringe, violet tendrils of gas whipping past the viewport like spectral claws. The engines whined in protest, their hum a constant reminder of the jury-rigged repairs from the last outpost. Beside him, Lyra scanned the readouts, her furred brow furrowed in concentration. Radiation spikes incoming, she murmured, her voice steady despite the flicker of alarm in her eyes. We push through or we drift. Torin, strapped into the co-pilot's seat, let out a low chuckle that didn't reach his ears. The wiry engineer wiped sweat from his scaled forehead, his claws tapping a rhythmic pattern on the auxiliary controls. Drift? Into what, exactly? The ghosts of your precious humans? His tone carried that familiar edge, witty deflection masking the fear they all shared. But Kale knew better. Torin's jokes were his anchor, pulling them back from the brink time and again. The shuttle bucked violently, alarms blaring as a plasma burst grazed the hull. Kale's heart pounded, but he kept his voice level. Steady. Lyra, reroute power to shields. Torin, isolate the port thruster, it's lagging. They moved as one, a trio forged in the fires of forgotten ruins. Lyra's cautious precision complemented Torin's bold improvisations, while Kale's bravery pushed them forward, even when doubt clawed at his resolve. Another jolt sent sparks flying from the overhead panel. Lyra yelped, batting at a smoldering wire. Shields at 40%. If we hit the core density, we're done. Her words hung heavy, the nebula's glow casting eerie shadows across her face. This wasn't just a storm, it was the galaxy's wrath, unyielding since humanity's vanishing. Legends whispered of their ingenuity taming such voids, but now without them, the stars seemed to conspire against the rest. Kale's mind raced to the artifact they'd salvaged from Epsilon Eridani, the human data core, pulsing with encrypted schematics. It had led them here, to the heart of the Orion Arms shroud, promising answers to why the galaxy starved for innovation. But the challenge loomed larger. The nebula's interference scrambled their NAV systems, and with fuel reserves dipping critically low, failure meant stranding in a tomb of ionized dust. Torin slammed a fist on his console, rerouting the thruster with a series of frantic overrides. Got it? Punching us through, hold on. The shuttle surged, engines roaring as they pierced a thinning veil. Gas clouds parted like curtains, revealing a faint glimmer ahead. A derelict station, its skeletal frame orbiting a dim star. Human design, unmistakable, angular lines defying the organic curves of alien architecture. Relief washed over them, short-lived. Scans pinged an anomaly. The station's core was active, drawing power from the nebula itself. That's impossible, Lyra breathed, her caution yielding to wonder. No one's touched these relics in cycles. Kale unstrapped, peering at the magnified feed. The structure loomed, scarred by eons, yet a single light pulsed in its depths. A beacon or a trap? We dock. Whatever's waiting, it's our way forward. Torin's grin flashed, sharp and defiant. After you, Captain. Just don't blame me if it eats us. As the shuttle aligned with the docking clamps, a low hum resonated through the hull, syncing with the artifact in Kale's pack. The galaxy's punishment felt a fraction lighter, but the risk pressed in. One wrong move and they'd join the silence humanity left behind. Docking seals hissed, and the airlock cycled open to darkness, inviting them deeper. Kale gripped the console edge as the shuttle shuddered, the asteroid's gravity well tugging like an insistent hand. Dust clouds billowed outside the viewport, obscuring the faint glow of the mining rig's emergency lights. Beside him, Lyra scanned the readouts, her tentacles twitching with frustration. The core's destabilizing faster than we thought. If we don't vent the excess plasma in the next cycle, it'll chain react through the whole belt. Torin, ever the steady one, adjusted his harness and pulled up the schematics on his wrist display. Human designs, he muttered, a hint of awe cutting through the tension. They built this to last, but without their oversight protocols, it's like a beast without a leash. The three of them, Kale the impulsive pilot, Lyra the sharp-eyed engineer, Torin the cautious navigator, had come too far to turn back. The galaxy had unraveled in humanity's wake, colonies collapsing into resource wars, but this rig held the key, a cache of ancient human tech that could stabilize their fleet's drives. Kale punched in a course correction, the engines whining in protest. We improvise. Lyra, can you rig a bypass using the auxiliary vents? Torin, keep us steady, those debris fields are thickening. The shuttle dipped, scraping against a rogue chunk of rock that sparked across the hull. Lyra nodded, her tools already humming as she extruded a connector from her suit. It's risky. One wrong seal and we're vapor. As they closed in, the rig loomed larger, a skeletal behemoth of alloy beams and forgotten machinery, its lights pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Alarms blared inside the shuttle, proximity warning. Torin leaned forward. Incoming signatures. Not debris. Drones, salvage bots from the Kragari clan. They're here for the same prize. Kale's jaw tightened. The Kragari had been hounding their trail since the Outer Rims, their hulking ships stripping worlds bare in the power vacuum humans left behind. No diplomacy now, it was survival. Evasive pattern delta. Lyra, how long? 2 cycles. Just hold them off. She worked furiously, sparks flying as she fused circuits, the acrid scent of melting insulation filling the cabin. The first drone salvo lit the void, energy lances slicing through the dust. Kale rolled the shuttle hard, the G-forces pinning them to their seats. A lance grazed the wing, shearing off a sensor array in a burst of flame. Torin fired countermeasures, chaff blooming like metallic flowers. They're locking on. We can't outrun them to the docking port. Kale's mind raced, flashing to the human logs they'd decrypted earlier, tales of ingenuity born from desperation. The rig's magnetic fields. If we slingshot through the outer ring, we can draw them into the plasma wake. It'll fry their shields. Lyra glanced up, eyes wide. Bold. But if the fields overload, we're done. Trust me. Kale grinned fiercely, banking toward the churning energy vortex at the rig's edge. The shuttle groaned, hull plates buckling under the strain. Drones pursued, their forms squat and relentless, closing the gap. Torin monitored the fields, his voice calm amid the chaos. Fields peaking. 3-2. The shuttle plunged into the maelstrom, plasma tendrils licking at the shields. Behind them, the drones followed, their formations fracturing as surges overwhelmed their systems. Explosions dotted the void, wreckage spiraling into the asteroid's maw. They burst through, docking clamps engaging with a metallic thud. Alarms silenced, but the rig trembled beneath them, core breach imminent. Lyra sealed the bypass just as the first tremor hit. It's holding. For now. Kale unstrapped, grabbing his toolkit. To the core chamber. We've bought time, but the Kragari won't stay down. As they vented into the rig's dim corridors, the weight of it settled. Humanity's absence had birthed monsters like the Kragari, but their relics offered a chance to fight back. One step closer, but the galaxy's punishment lingered in every shadow. Kale gripped the control yoke tighter, his claws scraping against the worn alloy as the shuttle bucked through the debris field. The viewport framed a nightmare of twisted metal and flickering energy shields, remnants of the human orbital ring that had once encircled Epsilon Prime. Now it was a graveyard, punishing the galaxy for humanity's long silence. Below, the planet's surface boiled with seismic fury, cracks glowing like veins of molten rage, all triggered by the ring's failing stabilizers. Without humans to maintain their impossible engineering, the structure was unraveling, threatening to drag the entire system into chaos. Shields at 40%, Lyra reported from the co-pilot's seat, her voice steady but edged with the strain of recalculating trajectories on the fly. She was the cautious one, always double-checking sensor readouts before committing to a vector, her feathered crest flattened against her skull in focus. That last fragment clipped us. If we push closer, we risk hull breach. Zorak, crammed into the engineering alcove behind them, snorted through his mask. Risk? We're already dancing with extinction. Patch me into the auxiliary core. I've got a jury rig from those human schematics we salvaged. His tentacles whipped across the console, witty barbs forgotten in the heat of adaptation. The big lug had a knack for turning alien tech into something functional, but human designs? They were poetry in circuits, defying logic until you embraced the grit. Kale nodded, banking the shuttle hard to avoid a spinning girder the size of a frigate. The image burned into his mind, a colossal human emblem etched on the debris, half eroded but defiant, as if mocking their desperation. We're not turning back. The core's our only shot. If we can interface Zorak's hack, we might lock the stabilizers before the ring collapses entirely. His own bravery felt hollow now, after the earlier plan's backfire. They tried beaming a remote override from the surface outpost, only for it to trigger defensive protocols that vented half the atmosphere and buried their backup team under rubble. 3 lives lost, a cost that hung heavier than the gravitational pull. Alarms wailed as another wave of debris surged toward them, propelled by the ring's decaying orbit. Lyra's talons flew over the controls, deploying microthrusters to weave through the storm. Incoming at Mark 047. Evasive, now. Kale yanked the yoke, the shuttle groaning in protest. They skimmed past a jagged panel, close enough to see the faded warning stenciled in that ancient human script. Caution, unstable trajectory. The ship shuddered, lights dimming as power diverted to shields. In the rear, Zorak cursed in his native dialect, a string of bubbles popping from his vents. Lost the primary link. Rerouting through the secondary, hold her steady, or this'll fry us from the inside. Sweat beaded on Kale's scales, the cockpit air thick with the acrid tang of overheating circuits. He could feel the stakes pressing in, not just for Epsilon Prime but for the fragile alliance of species piecing together what humanity left behind. Their absence wasn't mercy, it was a void that bred catastrophe. Lyra sink with Zorak's feet. We adapt or we die, human style. She hesitated a fraction, her cautious nature warring with the urgency, then slammed the interface live. Data streams flooded the displays, alien code clashing with human ingenuity like oil on water. Zorak's hack took hold, a clever bypass that repurposed the ring's old emergency protocols. The shuttle lurched as the core responded, a distant rumble vibrating through the hull, the stabilizers firing in fits and starts. But it wasn't clean. Feedback surged back through the link, frying auxiliary systems and sending sparks dancing across the consoles. Lyra yelped, yanking her hand from a live panel, singed feathers curling. It's fighting us. The AI's waking up, defensive subroutines engaging. Kale's mind raced, the adventurous fire in his chest tempered by the real risk of it all unraveling. They weren't heroes in some epic tale, they were scavengers grasping at ghosts. Zorak, isolate the aggression loop. Use that human override we decoded, turn their own weapons against the decay. The engineer grunted, tentacles blurring. On it. But if this backfires, we're part of the debris. A beat of silence, broken only by the ship's creaks, then a triumphant hiss. Locked. Stabilizers holding at 60%. We've bought time, maybe hours. The shuttle pulled away, the ring's silhouette steadying against the starfield, cracks on the planet below beginning to seal as gravitational tides eased. But Kale knew the cost lingered. The outpost in ruins, allies lost, and the galaxy's fragile balance teetering on their gamble. Humanity's absence had forced this ingenuity upon them, a punishment that forged reluctant triumphs from the brink. As the engines hummed toward safety, he wondered if they'd ever truly fill the void, or if it would claim them next. Kale gripped the console, his claws scraping against the worn alloy as the ship's alarms wailed like wounded beasts. The view screen flickered, showing the asteroid field ahead, a jagged maze of rock and ice, lit by the distant glow of the pulsar that had drawn them here. Ilara, ever the steady one, punched coordinates into the NAV system, her fur bristling with focus. We've got incoming, 3 drones closing fast. They're not scanning, they're locking weapons. Beside her, Jax muttered a curse in the old human tongue he'd picked up from the archives, his engineered frame humming with overclocked servos. He wasn't organic like them, but the AI core in his chest simulated frustration well enough. The decoy signal failed. Those relics must have adapted quicker than we thought. He glanced at Kale, the captain's eyes narrowing in that human-like way they'd all started mimicking. Options. Kale's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of what they'd uncovered. Humanity's exodus centuries ago hadn't been abandonment, it was a curse laid on the galaxy itself. Without their meddlesome ingenuity, the ancient network of gates had frayed, spewing anomalies like this pulsar storm. Now Guardian drones, mindless enforcers left behind, hunted any who approached, preserving the punishment. Their ship, the Echo, was the first in generations to get this close, but the stakes clawed at him. Fail and the rift would widen, swallowing systems whole. Evade pattern Delta, Kale ordered, voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. Ilara nodded, fingers flying, and the Echo banked hard, thrusters flaring blue against the void. The first drone's beam lanced past, scorching a nearby asteroid into vapor. Jax fired countermeasures, chaff blooming like metallic flowers, but the second drone pierced the cloud, its scan piercing their shields. Shields at 60%, Ilara reported, her tail lashing. We can't outrun them to the gate core. Kale slammed a fist on the armrest, the pain grounding him. They'd planned for this, use the human relics to spoof the drones, slip in, and seal the rift with the override code pieced from scattered data. But the drones had learned, their patterns shifting like a living algorithm. No more clever hacks, it was grit now. Jax, reroute power to forward arrays. We're going through the field. Jax's optics whirred. That'll fry the stabilizers. Risk of collision? Do it. Kale met Ilara's gaze, seeing the flicker of doubt she quickly buried. She'd been the cautious one, the archivist who'd argued against the mission, but here she was, trusting the leap. The ship plunged into the asteroids, a desperate ballet of dodges and bursts. Rock fragments pinged off the hull like hail on tin, each impact jarring Kale's bones. One drone followed, too precise, its fire grazing the engines. Alarms spiked, hull breach imminent. Ilara wrestled the controls, weaving through a narrow gap where two boulders loomed like sentinels. Hold on. Jax patched into the weapons, his voice a digital growl. Target acquired. A torpedo streaked out, detonating against the pursuer in a silent bloom of fire and debris. But the third drone flanked them, its beams slicing across the bridge viewport, cracking the reinforced glass. Sparks rained down. Kale shielded his eyes, tasting ozone. The Echo shuddered, listing as an asteroid clipped the wing. They were through the densest part now, the gate core's faint pulse visible, a colossal ring of iridescent alloy humming with trapped energy. But the drone was on them, relentless. Ilara, angle us toward the core's emitters, Kale said, an idea sparking from the human tales of last-ditch stands. Jax, overload the decoy beacon, make it mimic a gate search. She glanced back, understanding dawning. You're insane. It'll draw every drone in the sector. Better than dying quiet. Jax complied, his systems whining under the strain. The beacon flared, a false signal screaming humanity returns into the void. The drone hesitated, its pursuit vector glitching, then accelerated, locking on the bait. The Echo limped forward, engines coughing plasma. Ilara's hands trembled on the yoke, but she held course. Kale watched the drone close, heart pounding. The core loomed, its surface etched with faded script, warnings in a dead language. One chance left. As the drone fired, Jax ejected the beacon dead ahead. The beam hit true, vaporizing the fake signal in a spectacular flash that lit the field like a newborn star. Debris scattered, buying them seconds. The Echo docked with a grinding thud against the core's outer ring, clamps locking just as secondary alarms blared, more signatures inbound. Kale stood, grabbing the override device, a clunky relic cobbled from human scraps. We seal it now or the galaxy pays forever. Ilara powered down non-essentials, her voice tight. Consequences be damned. For once, let's be the meddlers they were. They moved as one into the core's shadowed maw, the weight of absence pressing close. But in that moment, with drones swarming the horizon, Kale felt the first stir of something new, humanity's echo, alive in their veins. The chamber hummed with the low thrum of recharging systems, the air thick with the scent of scorched circuits and alien incense. Ilara gripped the console's edge, her claws scraping against the smooth alloy as the final wave of the void storm battered the hull. Crix, ever the cautious one, huddled in the corner, his multifaceted eyes darting between the flickering readouts and the viewport where stars twisted like living flames. "It's holding," he muttered, voice a rasp over the alarms. "Barely." Beside her, Thorn, the human they'd unearthed from cryostasis, his skin pale but eyes sharp, wiped sweat from his brow and adjusted the makeshift patch on the core. He'd been telling them stories for cycles now, fragments of a lost era when humans bridged the stars not with weapons, but with sheer, stubborn invention. No grand speeches, just quiet explanations of leverage and fusion, things the galaxy had forgotten in humanity's wake. The absence had been a slow poison. Empires crumbled without that spark, species isolated by their own rigid protocols, until the void storms, echoes of unchecked cosmic rifts, devoured worlds. The first plan had failed spectacularly. They jury-rigged a shield from scavenged hull plates, but the storm's magnetic fury shredded it, venting atmosphere and nearly claiming Crix to the black. Ilara's arms still ached from hauling him back, a reminder of the cost. Now this. Thorn's adaptation using the ship's dormant human-era drives to pulse counterwaves, turning the storm's rage against itself. Like redirecting a river, he'd said, no bravado, just fact. A groan echoed through the decks as the core overheated, red lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Ilara's tail lashed. "Thorn, it's buckling." She slammed a panel shut, sparks flying across her fur. He nodded, hands steady on the controls. "One more surge. Crix, vent the auxiliary power, now." Crix hesitated, his instinct to preserve every scrap warring with trust. Then he moved, flipping switches with trembling precision. The ship shuddered, lights dimming to a ghostly blue. Outside, the storm's tendrils recoiled, the void fracturing like glass under pressure. Silence fell, broken only by the soft ping of stabilizing systems. Ilara exhaled, slumping against the wall. The galaxy stretched calm beyond the viewport, stars steady once more. But the core's damage lingered, a limp, they called it in human tales, meaning slower jumps, riskier hauls. Thorn straightened, a faint smile cracking his fatigue. "We made it. Together." Crix peered at the logs, his caution yielding to wonder. "The rifts, they're sealing. Your kind's designs remembered how. No victory parade, no erasure of the scars." Ilara met Thorn's gaze, seeing the weight of absence lifted, if only for them. The galaxy had punished itself long enough. Now, with one human's grit and their shared choices, it might learn to mend.